stomp 'em in the nuts. I'ma stomp 'em in the nuts. I'ma stomp 'em in the nuts. I'ma stomp 'em in the nuts.
Hey yo, what's good? Welcome to my underappreciated fighter series, where I talk about fighters that I believe don't get the respect that they deserve. Fighters that are often called bums, that are often disrespected by boxing fans, that really don't deserve it, or they deserve better. Today I will be talking about Antonio Margarito, the bad guy. Say goodnight to the bad guy. You need people like Margarito. Boxing needs bad guys like Margarito. No, I don't condone cheating either, guys. But Margarito was a bad dude. We'll get into all those other allegations later on in this video. But Margarito, he grew up in the city of Tijuana. A lot of people don't know this, but he was actually born in California. So he's actually American. But he grew up in Mexico, so he's Mexican American in a way, or maybe American Mexican, if you want to call it that. He turned pro in 1994 with an amateur record of 18 wins and 3 losses. So he had very minimal amateur experience. He was 15 years old, being thrown with the dogs. And Tijuana is a rough city for anybody on the come up, especially a young 15-year-old kid. Watch some of his videos from his first fights. He was a kid. His first loss came against the first fighter with a winning record in his 6th fight against Victor Lozoya. Lozoya was seven wins and 1 loss. Lozoya was 19 years old, and Margarito was 15 years old. You say, oh, 4-year difference. That's not a lot, but a 15-year-old versus a 19-year-old, that's a big difference. His second loss came against Larry Dixon 2 years later. So Margarito was now 17-year-old. Larry Dixon was 13-0. And he was 28 years old. It's a 17-year-old versus a 28-year-old. His next loss was against another 28-year-old. He was still 17, against Rodney Jones. So these losses came when he was very young, not well managed. He was on the come up on his own. He was managing his own career. He didn't have the opportunities to fight guys with losing records or guys that were weak oppositions when he was on the come up. He had to do it the hard way. So his next significant fights before he got title fights was his win against Sergio Martinez, an undefeated Sergio Martinez. He knocked him out. He was 16-0-1. And that would become more significant later. Yes, Martinez did not hit his stride yet, but that fight is significant. It becomes significant later for what Sergio Martinez does in the future. He beat Frankie Randall. He knocked him out in the 4th round. Randall is the man who beat Chavez. He was the first man to beat Chavez in the professional ranking. And Frankie Randall is also a 3-time world champion. So nothing to scoff at. He won the title 2002 against Antonio Diaz, the welterweight title, the WBO title. And he made 7 defenses of that title. In those defenses, there was a few significant fights. He beat Andrew Sixhead Lewis, who was a former world champion, and he only had 1 loss to Ricardo Mayorga. Knocked him out in the 2nd round. He beat Kermit Citron in the 5th round. Citron was a killer then. He was a big knockout puncher. He was 24-0 with 22 knockouts. And he basically made him quit. His corner stopped the fight, and he just started crying after that fight was stopped, because he knew that he could not do anything against Margarito. That Margarito was just too ruthless. He beat Joshua Clottey. Joshua Clottey only had one loss at that point. That was a really good fight. Joshua Clottey was actually winning that fight, but he injured his left hand in the fourth round, so he couldn't do much after that. That was his sixth title defense. And then he fought Paul Williams. The interesting thing about Paul Williams is he was a 6'1" welterweight. This was in 2000. This was in 2007. No one wanted to fight Paul Williams. None of the big names. I'm not even gonna mention the Money Man, and that's the only mention of him in this video. I'm not gonna mention him at all after this. But none of them wanting to fight him. Margarito was also one of the most avoided fighters in that time. So Paul Williams versus Margarito were the two most avoided fighters at that time fighting each other. Also, Paul Williams versus Sergio Martinez was the two most avoided fighters at that time. So Paul Williams went against anybody that would actually fight him. So that was a really good fight. Margarito lost in a very close fight. I had it 7 rounds to 5, and all the judges had it 7 rounds to 5. Margarito lost the first 6 rounds, but in the second half of the fight, he brought it. He started pressuring him, started landing some heavy shots on him, but Paul Williams outlasted him and won the fight. It was legit. It was a good win. He lost the title, but I wonder if that fight was 15 rounds, how it would have ended up. We don't know, but there's a few fights like that you say to yourself, I wonder if it was 15 rounds. It was a good, exciting fight. That's why I wouldn't have mind if it went 15 rounds. There are a lot of fights that I don't want to go 15 rounds that I'm glad there's only 10 rounds. I mean 12 rounds instead of 15, but this is one of those occasions where you have to wonder if it was 15 rounds, maybe Margarito would have stopped Paul Williams, or he would have won the last 3 rounds. Who knows? Who knows? But just for fighting Paul Williams, he has to get props, man, because Paul Williams, he was a monster, and he had the chance to fight Cotto, but he chose Paul Williams. He chose to fight Paul Williams over Miguel Cotto. Interesting fact about this fight: Gotti's last fight was on the undercard. Couple stats on that fight: the Margarito versus Paul Williams. Paul Williams threw 1,083 punches, averaging over 100 punches, and he landed 243. Margarito landed 571 and landed 155. So even though he landed a little bit more than half of or threw a little bit more than half of what Paul Williams threw, he still came close to winning that fight. He beat Kermit Citron again to get his second world title, the IBF, and then the famous one, the fight that made Margarito famous, that made him infamous, you could say, a fight with Miguel Cotto. What an epic war these guys have. This is one of the greatest welterweight fights of all time. Margarito came from behind to beat Miguel Cotto, an undefeated 32-0 Miguel Cotto, man. What a fight was this, man. Yo, bloody Miguel Cotto. Man, epic, epic stuff. Margarito brought the pressure and Cotto just couldn't handle it. He basically made Miguel Cotto quit in this fight. Great fight, and that was his best victory. And his last victory against a notable fighter. His next fight is that infamous fight against Shane Mosley, where Nassim Richardson caught Javier Capetillo, I think that's his name, trying to sneak in plaster against plaster in Margarito's hand wraps. It's like a plaster substance, the kind that you use for cast. So not necessarily like cement or rocks or bricks, like people like to say, but it's the thing that makes up cast. What casts are made of. If you've ever had a cast or felt cast, they're hard. They're pretty hard. I mean, in pro wrestling, some people with cast they use it as a weapon. Anyway, Shane Mosley, he beat that ass, man. Shane Mosley beat that ass. This was Mosley's last great fight, his last great performance against this three-time world champion, Antonio Margarito. Damn. Interesting thing, I didn't know that was for the junior middleweight world title. Oh no. Sorry. It says because it says Super World. It's a lot of. I hate these alphabet organizations. Never mind. It was for the Super World welterweight, not the Super welterweight. Scratch that. But yeah, Mosley fought a great fight. His next significant fight was against Pacquiao, and I shat all over this fight, guys. Before it happened, I was like, Margarito did nothing to deserve a fight against the biggest star in boxing at that time. And yes, I think Pacquiao was the biggest star, bigger than Mayweather at that time, because Mayweather was only fighting once a year at that time. But Pacquiao, we know what Pacquiao did to Margarito, man. He beat the living shit out of him. He broke his orbital bone. You see the pictures. You see this on the screen right now. Man, he looked like a monster. And I say, from this fight, Antonio Margarito paid all his sins from this beating. Because he got beaten so bad. No one wanted to stop the fight. Not the ref, not Robert Garcia, and definitely not Margarito. But this was Pacquiao at his best. This was the best Pacquiao that ever existed. This was the Pacquiao that was getting compared to Henry Armstrong. This was the monster Pacquiao. 2010, man. Crap. And Pacquiao was never the same after that fight. All these heavy blows took its toll. Margarito was a big ass dude too. He was 5'11", after all. The biggest guy that Pacquiao has ever fought. He landed some big shots on Pacquiao. Of course, Pacquiao landed the heavier shots, but that fight took its toll, and he was never the same after that. After that fight, you had the Marquez, the third fight. Then you had the Bradley fight, which he looked horrible in those fights. Then he had the fourth fight with Bradley. I forgot the Mosley fight. He looked terrible. Every fight, he looked terrible after the Margarito fight. Because that fight took a toll on Pacquiao's body because Margarito was a hell of a fighter. And his last fight against Miguel Cotto, in which the referee stopped it, I thought it was a bit early. But I mean, if you have a uh, an injury that's been there for a while, and it's gonna affect your eye vision, then I guess stop the fight. But Margarito wasn't hurt at all. It was just his eye. He couldn't handle the punishment any longer. So he retired after this fight. There's been rumors about his comeback lately, but I'd embrace it. I'd love to see Margarito fight again because he gave exciting fights. He threw a million punches while he's fighting. He gave it his all, man. He was a hell of a fighter, a good fighter, and beat some damn good fighters too. So I'm gonna address the hand wrap situation. Margarito was caught trying to put illegal hand wraps against Shane Mosley. And that's all we know about that. We could speculate, yes, he used plaster against Cotto, he used them against Citron, all those. We do not know, guys, and we will never know. Margarito will never admit to something like that. So, guys, I don't know. I don't want to people to try to convince me that Margarito used hand wraps, illegal hand wraps against Cotto. Because if you watch that fight, it was the pressure. It was the pressure from Margarito throwing all those punches, hard punches, those beautiful uppercuts, that body work from Margarito that got to Cotto. Not any illegal hand wraps. Illegal hand wraps or not, Cotto took a beating that night. And there was no way he was going to survive after that. So, cut that out. We do not know. So, stop trying to prove it, in quotations, I put it. Stop trying to prove that Margarito used illegal hand wraps because we will never find out. And for those people that, yeah, he did, I know it. You don't know Jack. You do not know. No one knows. If you think that, that's cool. But you're not going to convince me and anyone that believes maybe Margarito's innocent. I'm not going to say Margarito's innocent. It's a verdict of not guilty. He hasn't been proven not guilty or guilty yet. And if there's ever evidence that comes up that proves that Margarito used them in the Cotto fight, then I'll accept it. But that picture, Cotto, that you showed in the face-off, it does not convince me. No, it doesn't. On another note, that face-off was my favorite face-off. The Margarito versus Cotto, the second fight. Margarito's a G. He's a real G. You have Cotto trying to put that picture of Margarito's hand wraps after that fight, after the first Cotto fight, and Margarito's like, yeah, so? And what? You don't want to fight me or what? You don't want to fight, huh? You want to cancel the fight? That's gangster stuff. And that's why Margarito embraced being the bad guy. And that's how I remember him. And I think that's how a lot of you guys will remember him. You will remember disliking him. You will remember hating him because he's a cheater or because you guys think that he cheated in multiple fights. He only tried to cheat on one fight that we know of. Up to now. Up to now. We do not know. But Margarito had a hell of a career. 38 and 8 with 27 knockouts. His net worth, according to Celebrity Network, is $15 million. So, Margarito coming up as a 15-year-old boxer from Tijuana, man. That is very unlikely to having $15 million in the bank. That's the American dream, man. Even though he doesn't claim to be American, he is. And he was on the come up. That's the American dream. He became a 3-time world champion, beat a future Hall of Famer, fought a few future Hall of Famers. The only guys that knocked him out are future Hall of Famers, Mosley and Miguel Cotto. Not even when he was 15 years old, fools couldn't knock him out because he had one of the best chins in boxing as well. That's another thing about Margarito. He had a great chin. So, yeah, pay Margarito some respect. You may not like the dude, but he had a hell of a career. He had a good career. 3-time world champion, a 38 and 8 record. He beat Miguel Cotto, and he's made some money in his career. What more can you ask? All right. Thanks everybody for watching. What are some underappreciated fighters that you could think of, or other fighters that are straight out hated, like Margarito? Anyway, you guys have a great day.